Hi there guys and girls, and welcome to another video from me, Simon Williams, GingerGM. I expect you know what I'm called by now. And what we're going to look at in this video is a game I recently played. I've just returned from an international tournament in Jersey. A lovely tournament, highly recommended. It's only a week long, and Jersey's a little island in between the south of England and France. It's actually nearer to France, but England do have some sovereignty over this island, but it's its own place, Jersey. And I was invited to this tournament, and I have to say, highly recommended. Now, I'll give you some dates of the tournament later on, but let's just go over the game first. And I've got about maybe 4 games I wanted to show you, because there was some very interesting moments in a number of my games. But I thought I'd start with a win, give myself a bit of confidence before I show you my 2 losses from this tournament. Now, what about this tournament? Well, it was played in a hotel, which was right smack bang crack on the beach. And this is a photo I actually took on my iPhone on the first night. And you can just see how beautiful and quiet that beach is, which is just opposite the hotel. A beautiful beach which goes on for a long way, so I'm just kind of setting the scene here. Another great place I found along the beach was this place, and look at the weather there. I've even got a bit of a suntan, believe it or not. Gingers do tan, unbelievable. And what do you reckon that is? The Thai Dick Shack. Well, if you were in Thailand, you might have some, you might go in there and be a bit worried what you're going to get. But in England, it was actually, Jersey, should I say, a beautiful Thai place on the beach, only 10 minutes from the hotel. So that was really good. And it was right by one of our meeting points, the pub. And here's a photo with me, and in the back there, the glasses, is Lawrence Webb, FIDE Master. At the front there, you had the very famous and nice journalist who does a lot of reports at Chessbase, Alina Laami, and she came third equal. And then the winner of the tournament, Mark Hebden, on the other side, and well, you can probably tell where I was there. And here's Mark celebrating at the end closing ceremony with his 405th glass of whiskey there. So that's a little background to the tournament anyway. It's like doing a holiday slideshow. You come back and you bore the family with your pictures from your holiday. Oh, here we are having a margarita on the beach. Here we are taking a photo of blah, blah, blah. So I've probably bored you now. So I'm going to move on to the chess. So I had the black pieces, and this was on one of the double round days. They're only going to have one of these next year. And the game started d4. And I didn't have long to prepare, only half an hour. And I thought I'd try a setup that was brought to my attention by a very strong and up-and-coming player in England, Alan Merry, who I lost to in the tournament. I'm going to show that game in a later video. Very interesting. And Alan Merry plays the Dutch, my favourite opening. And obviously you can look at this in my Killer Dutch DVD. You can buy this on GingerGM.com, which does 8 hours tuition on this opening. But I thought I'd try a move that Alan prepared against me recently, and that is after knight to f6, bishop g2. Now, fianchettoing the bishop over here is white's most standard way of playing against the Dutch. It's a good way to stop black from going b6, and it's the normal way for white to play. And here I played g6, and this is a move I've never played before. This could be the start of the new Dutch. This could be a real new and interesting way of playing the Dutch. It's a very rare move, this. And I remember, I think Richard Palliser wrote an article on this in a book a number of years ago, which I did some part writing on as well. The Dangerous Weapons book for every man on dangerous ideas in the Dutch. And this weird idea was coined the Christmas tree, because if you look at the pawn structure, it looks a little bit like a Christmas tree, they say. So it's the Christmas tree variation of the Dutch. Now, I have to admit, during the course of this game, I wasn't aware how similar and how much it transposes to the Leningrad Dutch. And I think it's more in common with the Leningrad Dutch than anything else. But my idea was simply to play a bit like a classical Dutch, but put my bishop on g7. So I wanted to continue with that, and then with eventually e5, as I'm sure you're aware is a common idea in a Dutch. So it's a very interesting and good way to get your opponent out of the theory, or so I thought. Now Mark continued to play at 400 million miles per hour. He castled very quickly. Of course, my bishop came to g7, and now the standard move in this position is c4. So white gets 2 pawns, controlling the centre, and now I shuffle my king over to safety, and here knight to c3 played. Now generally in these setups, I mean, I know them extremely well, playing them for the last 30 years. There's a couple of ideas that white has. One is to go e4 at some point, because generally then the pawn exchange will help white gain space, gain a half open e-file, and this will normally mean he can pressurise the pawn on e6, which is often weak, especially when you go d6. So positionally speaking, the move e4 is a key idea. Now the other way white can play is by going b3 or b4 and putting the bishop on somewhere like b2 to try to stop you playing e5. So in this game, Mark picks strategy number 1, knight c3. Now Alan Merry likes to play this position with d5, but I'm rather doubtful about this move. This is like a sort of weird, like ugly sister of the stone wall Dutch, and I don't like it. This bishop here. I mean, I don't trust this variation, and I think the move d6 makes a lot more sense here, with the idea of just trying to aim for e5. And now we have really transposed into a Leningrad Dutch here, but slightly different, because in the Leningrad, black rarely plays e6. So now Mark continues with his idea of going e4. Now if white doesn't do anything here, I will go for the e5 break, a key concept in the classical Dutch, or whatever the hell Dutch this is. So I will go queen to e7 with the idea of going e5. This is my key point. Maybe I can also try h6 g5 and go, well, hey, off to work we go over there. Not so stupid, actually. I have to be a bit careful, just to let you know, about playing knight to c6 too soon. You do not want to run into d5, because you want to meet the move d5 with e5, and you cannot do that if white plays d5 and attacks your knight. So these are some subtle hints to help you play the Dutch. But anyway, on with the game. Rook e1 played, and going for e4. I really didn't want to allow Mark to play this without a fight, and the typical way you meet this is by playing knight to e4, a very normal idea in Dutch defence. And I've played this system with a bishop on e7 here for donkey's years, and I'm probably the leading practitioner on that, and you can check it out in the DVD. But this is very interesting, because here the bishop has more influence on g7, and often when you go knight to e4 in the classical Dutch, you will continue by moving your bishop on e7 to f6. So this idea of knight to e4 here, I think looks very good to me, because again, one of white's main responses with a bishop on e7 is to take on e4, and this has got me a little bit scared in the past, but here it loses a lot of its power because we have this pressure against d4. So it's not so strong here. So instead of taking on e4, Mark played queen c2, and he was banging out his moves. I didn't realise this was all theory. I was, quite shocked. So I took on c3. Mark took back with a pawn. Queen takes as possible. And now I play e5, the thematic break in the classical Dutch. And this is the one move you're aiming for. Mark banged out his next move, took on e5. And now he played bishop a3, stroking my rook there on f8. And now my rook has to move to a slightly annoying square e8, because I think I kind of want it on the f-file. And here he now plays e4 very quickly. Now, if he doesn't play e4, I'm probably going to play e4. Now, structurally speaking, I'm better here. Look at these ugly, ugly pawns over here. So if he allows me to play e4, this will help my position strategically. Now, why would that be? Well, mainly his bishop on g2 would then be glancing at my pawn on e4, so I'm blocking that piece in. But as well as blocking his bishop in, I increase the range of my bishop. So if I'm allowed to play one move here, e4, I'm clearly better, I'd say, because I just had these targets on the queen side to attack. So Mark plays e4, and he played it very quickly. I now played knight to c6, developing a piece. I thought it can't be a bad move. And here Mark played his next move, but this was a big mistake. He was following, which I was totally unaware of. I thought this has to be a unique position. I didn't realise it had been played something like, 20 times before. He was following a game Giri as white against Reindeer Man. Reindeer Man? I think that's his name. Apologies if I got that wrong. And Giri, well, we know how well paired Giri is, and Reindeer Man is an expert in the Leningrad Dutch. And that game, which I think white should certainly play, went pawn takes f5, when you have a decision to make here for black. Now, ideally, you'd probably want to take with a bishop on f5, developing a piece, playing active. But here, white can play queen to b3, and he gets very active here, and there's some problems against b7. I don't think this is so bad, these lines. When I've checked it with the computer, I still think, black can generate in a lot of positions and move e4 here. And I really still think these kind of positions, because black's so active, you can even give up this pawn on b7 in a number of lines, and your knight can hop in quickly to here. So I don't even think these are bad. But the way that the Reindeer Man Giri game went was pawn takes. So that's after, pawn takes here. And now rook d1. And in this position, queen to f6. And here, I was looking at this position in the game, but I missed Giri's idea, knight to d4. And this move here is quite a tricky move to deal with. If white didn't have knight d4, black would be better. But white's just playing with his pieces as actively as he can, because again, pawn structure favours black. So that's what Mark was aiming for, being aware of this Giri game, but he got his move order mixed up. And he played rook d1 first. So I played queen f6 very quickly, and now he took on f5. And here, I can now go bishop takes f5, and we have a different story. The inclusion of moves rook d1 and queen f6 helped me. So after queen b3, I now play bishop g4. And this knight can't, well, it can move, and maybe Mark should have moved it, but then I at least win the exchange. In actual fact, here, I was a bit worried about knight d2. Not worried, but I thought this is Mark's best choice. And if I grab the rook at any point, then my opponent has quite nice play on the light squares. Knight to e4, bishop here. But of course, he's the exchange down, so I can't be complaining here. But I think Mark should have played this. So really, the opening, after what happened, he played rook d3, which I was quite shocked about, actually, has been a complete success for me. So 1 up for the Christmas tree. Or do I sing a Christmas tree song, a Christmas time song? I'm not sure. So I'll certainly be playing this again in the future. Very, very interesting opening, and maybe something that you guys might want to take away as a response to d4. I mean, I think I am one of the world's leading experts on the Dutch, and this is certainly something that I think would surprise a lot of players, and it's a unique way to play. So after rook d3, well, I thought, why not? Push on, and this creates a fork. Mark's idea was rook e3. I'm trying to pin my e-pawn down to the rook, but I simply play bishop h6 here, and it's quite well, amusing. I don't know if amusing is the right word, because I'm sure Mark was not so amused, but it's quite surprising how quickly white's position just collapses now. Mark can't really move this rook because I just win a piece. I will take on f3 at the correct moment. So he has to sack the exchange, forced. So of course I take the exchange. And now I still have to play a little bit accurately here. And Mark is one of the trickiest guys in the world. He's such a fighter, Mark. You know, you don't ever chalk up a point in chess, but especially not against Mark, because I've seen him swindle so many positions before. Of course, I'm winning though because I'm exchange up. Now, I could take on d4 here, but after c takes d4, there's some slight potential of Mark going bishop b2 and d4, and then he will get great compensation for the exchange. So I came up with a very clever idea here. Knight to e5, and this makes this knight a very active attacker. And even if I lose a pawn, which Mark does grab, it means that my opponent will find it hard to get his dark square bishop on this diagonal. And that's the only way I thought he could prove compensation. Mark now took on e4, but really now I just have to play bishop h3, controlling the f1 square, and he's really busted here. And the game, to be honest, should not have lasted more than 5 moves, but it got very interesting, so I will continue looking at it a bit far. Now the point here is, if Mark plays something like queen takes b7, so he's got 2 pawns to the exchange, but I now go rook f8, and let's say he takes on f8, I take on f8, he cannot stop my queen easily coming to f2, or even queen f1, followed by checkmate. For example, queen b2, stopping me coming into f2, but he's not stopping me coming into f1. Check. And now this is a very typical checkmate pattern here. So this is the problem. He's also getting attacked as well as being material down, so not very pleasant. So Mark tried bishop g2, but I took on g2. Now play knight g4, and this really should have been a resignation for Mark, but of course there's no point resigning. You can't win games from resigning. I'm threatening queen f2 check, and if he plays what he wants to play, rook f1, I just take on e3, game over. So I did actually, well, I say you shouldn't relax, but I think I didn't quite relax, but after, well, he's checked me here, and now he tries queen takes b7, a real sort of desperation move. And here I got lazy. Let's be honest, I got lazy. I went queen f2 check thinking, look, this is just, I mean, king h3. I mean, how the hell can he survive this? And I fought for about half a second on my next move. And I really, in these kind of positions, you've got to sit down. I had loads of time. I had 45 minutes left. I should sit here for half an hour and work out where the checkmate is, because it's clear to see that his king should not last being walking around the board on h3. I mean, how should that ever deserve to last the game? So I should have worked it out, but I went queen takes h2 check, assuming that look at this king here. I've got you know, queen h5 check. He only has 1 square here. I just assumed this was winning. I did see an idea, but I suddenly realised at this moment it didn't work. Okay, well I continue now. It's not so easy to mate him, surprisingly enough. It should be mate, but it's not so easy. I mean, I continue g5 check. He only has 1 square. King f5, and now I continue g4 check. This certainly helps me. Again, only really 1 move. He's not going to come to f6. Queen g6 is mate. He has to go back. But look at this crazy king wandering around the board. And in the next video, I'll show you my crazy king. I actually got mated rather painfully by the very talented Jovanka Huska. Now, when I went into this line, I originally calculated, and this is where I really messed things up, that I could play queen f7 check. And here I was only looking at king takes g4, but of course, white can play knight to f5, and it's not even clear I'm better there. But I was looking at the nice line, king takes g4, rook g8 check, and then at some point, rook takes g3. For example, king here, I check, and now rook takes g3. And this leads to a lawnmower checkmate, as I say, like cutting the lawn, or guillotine is the other word like this. It's not so hard to work out. It's a very common theme, that. So this is what I saw, but I suddenly saw in this position that knight to f5, and there's no more lawnmower. In actual fact, this knight is a fantastic piece now. I could be worse here, believe it or not. So I'm getting quite annoyed with myself, and I saw a win. I saw a win here. And I went for the win, but it was amazing. I actually, in this position, totally missed the move h6 here. I mean, just complete blindness to miss this, which would have really forced resignations. Mark, I mean, the idea is queen g5 checkmate, but I totally missed this idea. Totally missed this very simple concept. He has to play knight to e6, and this is what Mark was relying on. With the idea if I take, he takes on a8, and you know, this move he thought held him together. But now I do the same idea I just showed you. Queen f7 check, and he can't go knight to f5 anymore. So it's the same checkmate. The same checkmate as I demonstrated. So very, very, very silly I didn't see this. Because instead, okay, I saw a win. I went queen takes e5, check. King takes g4, check. And now his king has to run back to this way, king f3. And here I played my next move quite quickly because I realised actually here, if I go rook takes g3 check, again, this is what happens when you move prematurely. A good bit of advice here. Don't just play the first move that comes to your brain. You have to work things out as deeply as you can. Because if you play this natural looking move, which looks like it's winning, in actual fact, white could be better here. King e2 is a great move here. Otherwise, my rook comes in. But after this, I don't think I'm better. Like, rook takes e3 check, king d2. And maybe white's better. And this would have been, well, shall we say, painful for me. Painful is certainly the right word here. And what about queen takes e3? Well, queen takes e3, he goes king d1. And if queen d3 check, king c1. And you're going to see why I played the move I did in a minute. But after queen takes c3 check, knight c2. And with bishop b2 coming, I'm probably lost here. So it just shows you that, you know, even when you think you're winning, you can't just throw in the checks without working out the consequences. Luckily here, well, I say luckily, I mean, I played the next move very quickly. Rook b8. And this means that if my opponent moves his queen, and this is completely winning, if he moves his queen, now I go rook takes g3 here, queen takes e3 here, here check here, and now my rook is on the b file, so I go rook b1 checkmate. This is the important difference. So after rook b8, Mark has to give up his queen, and he still fought very hard, but the game was eventually lost. I mean, he took here, and now, well, I took here, check, and I took the queen. He has two pieces for the queen, and with a bit of care, it's obviously winning. But, I mean, not as strong as checkmating, which I really should have done. But, you know, the game continues, c6. I wanted to stop his bishop coming in. This is the only... Okay, how do you play it with your queen against two minor pieces? Let's say the knight and bishop. Well, what you've got to do, you've got to stop them from coordinating. If your opponent can ever coordinate his minor pieces and get them defending each other, then he should be okay. But what you need to do is keep them separated and try to just keep them uncoordinated. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to stop his bishop coordinating. And the game finished here. And again, this move stops his bishop coordinating. If he takes my pawn, I've got queen a5 winning the bishop. So really, I grab this pawn now. And again, I hit his rook, stopping coordinating. He tries to get his pieces snuggled up. But here I play a move stopping coordinating, forces bishop to a bad square. And now again, when you have a queen, you can always throw in some useful checks. And this is important because I need to stop his bishop coming to this square and coordinating. And now, eventually, well, here, I got this check in, this check, and Mark resigned here. He's lost here. Because of king e5, rook d6, and I have queen f6, checkmate, next move. No way to stop that. And if king to this square, then I was going to play just rook to a8. And again, I'll win a piece and win the game. So that was really that game. So it was quite interesting. Had some very interesting moments. Interesting opening. Certainly the Christmas tree. Dutch. A new Dutch. I thought I'd exhausted every single Dutch in the world. And I've now found a new Dutch to have an affair with. So I can now have a new affair with a new Dutch. I'm very excited. I've played the Stonewall. I've played everything, but not the Christmas tree. So very interesting. I mean, the Christmas tree is this idea. Maybe I'll do a video on some theory on it, where you play your normal first three moves of the Dutch setup, but instead of playing the bishop to e7, which is a very typical classical Dutch, and this is what the Killer Dutch, my DVD, goes into in 8 hours, and I have to say, if you look at that DVD, that will give you all the middle game concepts you need to play the Christmas tree. So it's still very relevant. But this G6 move, very, very interesting concept. With the idea, I want to play E5. And here, if my opponent tries to play E4, I stop this, but I get E5 in immediately. And there is a big argument to be said that the bishop on G7 is much better placed than it is on E7. Interesting. Anyway, if you want to come over and play Jersey again next year, I'm pretty sure I'll play. It's a great tournament. You can get very cheap flights from England. If you book in advance, only £50. My flight was only about £100 return, British Airways. It's only a 45-minute flight from Gatwick. There's some nice pubs there, nice atmosphere there. It's played in a nice hotel with a nice bar, lovely walks, and lovely, lovely small tournaments. It reminds me of a quaint Gibraltar. It's like Gibraltar without all the glazzy, Gibraltar's a great tournament, but it's a smaller, nice tournament. And the dates are start of April next year, 1st of April onwards. So very highly recommended. It's a very fun, nice and entertaining tournament. I enjoyed myself there. I'll show you some other games I had later on, but that was my win against the tournament leader, Mark Hebden. And Mark went on to get 8 out of 9, I believe. So he had a very big score after losing to me. Maybe even got 8.5. I think it was 8 out of 9. And I came second on my own with 6.5 out of 9. So after that loss... Oh no, Mark got 7.5 out of 9. Sorry, because he lost to me and he drew with Alamelli. How could he get 8.5 out of 9 if I just showed you my victory against him? I must be going Looney Tunes today. He got 7.5 out of 9. I was 1 point behind, 6.5 on my own. Getting a nice, nice bit of prize money, etc. Thank you so much for watching that video. Hope it wasn't too long, but I wanted to explain, the ideas as much as I could, and thought it was interesting, so I spent a bit of extra time there. Please please subscribe to my channel if you're just watching that. That'll help me make more DVDs at a regular time. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll try to do another video hopefully tomorrow. If not, very soon. Bye for now.